Just to.
Does that mean, should I unmute for whenever I'm talking? I mean, you all can hear me just fine.
I think you only need it when you're speaking to someone online, or if there's people in
Well,
the
I mean, I'm
chairs.
always speaking to the people online. They're here too. I mean, Katie, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you guys.
All right, cool. Well, I guess, oh gosh, do non-voting members make it a hybrid meeting? Probably. Let's do a roll call to call this meeting of the Ad Hoc Community Preservation Act Study Committee to order. Katie.
Here.
Sandy. Here. Margaret.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
And Joe here. All right, to the agenda. So we have, let's see. So yeah, we were done going through, everybody has done their presentation on their area. It is now time and a way to get down to the real business of talking about putting together a report and sharing it with the community. So our, agenda discusses outreach in general, presentation for financial forum in particular. We can start talking about how Reading could create a community preservation committee, which we weren't specifically charged with doing, but I guess it's kind of part of the process of adoption. And then, yes, anything we want to say about the report, and then future agendas and meeting minutes. So we should have an outreach plan. What little we've done so far has been, people volunteering their, who are already going to be at Friends and Family Day, volunteering their respective tables, which I really appreciate. We've already identified the Fall Street Fair as an outreach opportunity. We've already identified November, the subsequent to town meeting, as an outreach opportunity. Are there other places where we should be doing outreach that people know about?
I think we should invite ourselves to any and all town committees.
That's a lot. Aren't there 80?
Well, I mean, relevant.
Relevant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of one that I would consider irrelevant. I don't know, the parking committee.
We don't have that one anymore, but yes. The
traffic and parking.
Yeah.
Unless we can do parking lots, I'm not sure we can.
That doesn't sound like preservation. It sounds kind of like the opposite, actually.
Parking lots for.
Well, fair. We could, in fact, have done the town forest parking lot. So
yeah,
that's not usually the parking that people complain about, though.
Right. But I guess the thought there is those sources could be asked to be supportive, or at least to substantively comment on the proposal. And it's a little song and dance, then silence waiting for feedback, or maybe a request that they give a thumbs up or down.
So you mean
it gets a little political, but I think it also could be considered, sort of appropriate due diligence and getting the word out in connection with town meeting.
So you mean as far as we're going to tell them, here's our presentation that we're going to present to the select board on this date, and we hope that you'll attend that meeting?
No, I think it's, we could have a report in hand. That would be ideal. A flyer, information sheet that has been putting drafts together on. And you just simply say, we're a committee of the town, this is what we're working on. We want to make sure you're aware of it. Here's a little bit of the substance. And we'd love to hear from you on the subject. And I think that, you know, looking at the first thumbs up or down at town meeting, that would be that round going through those rounds would be an astute and helpful thing.
So do you want to go through the list tonight of all the committees?
Oh, we could.
Pick them out?
We could. Can I interrupt briefly to welcome Martha, who's joined?
Hey,
Hello,
hello,
sorry I'm late. I was having computer issues.
you're here now.
That's very relatable. All right. Cool. So yes, so we were just, opened up the general topic of outreach, and I asked where should we do outreach? And Sandy was starting to talk about going to other committees.
This would be very similar to, I think, what Martha had done with a couple of 3 committees that she had given a briefing to
Yeah.
and gotten some feedback from. I think that's a good microcosm of what
And I feel like any committee we go to is just a way to kind of educate them. I mean, I would try to, not go, I probably wouldn't go to the charter review committee, but
Yeah.
I would go to,
planning.
the planning, the community, the community planning.
CPDC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Do you want to just run down the list now? Or?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I was just looking in the ad hoc. I started with ad hoc to see who would,
Well, alphabetically, they're going to come first
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
AD.
yeah.
Even comes before audit.
But like the, let's run right through.
All right, I am opening the boards page. Actually, should I present this? Present this, I suppose.
Jackie can, right?
Jackie, do you mind presenting the boards page? Over boards, there's an open the boards page at the very top. All right, so this is interesting. Taking it from the top.
Cemetery, yes, because they've already,
We'll do but I mean, before we get there, affordable housing starts with an A.
oh, you're right. So,
So
are you on, you're on the affordable housing?
I am on the affordable housing.
Have you already talked to them about it?
Well, we only had 1 meeting so far, which is very nice because we hadn't had any meetings.
Oh,
And so it did come up. But I would look to make a more formal presentation. We didn't have all of our members and all of that there.
okay.
all right, so we can skip past appointments and cemetery.
So cemetery has a lot of preservation requests because they actually came to the historical commission looking for, do you
yes.
have any funds for some things that like are falling, or in disrepair, falling apart? So I think they would be interested.
Anything involving the older cemeteries in town would undoubtedly
It's
be.
mostly just Laurel Hill,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That's the biggie. All right, probably not Board of Health or, hold on, I'm thinking for a second about the library.
I would do the library.
Yeah, the library. Writing that down.
Isn't the library in a historical building?
That's what I was
Among other
thinking.
things that came to mind, yep. They also are just plugged into a lot of different things and might have suggestions for things we could do with the CPA. So I think I would definitely like their input. Let's see, not registrars. Bylaw. Oh, we do need to talk to bylaw. We need to talk to bylaw a lot, in fact.
Bill?
Yes, because there has to be a bylaw creating a community preservation committee.
Okay.
Which some communities do at the same time.
Yeah.
It's curious to me, but
How do you know this,
Yeah,
We
it's,
talked, well, someone who was here did that.
yeah,
Was
so
it Winchester?
Winchester, they
Oh.
did in their town meeting when they voted on putting CPA on the ballot, they also voted to create a community preservation committee. And that was, yeah, that turned out to be more of a political hullabaloo than the adoption itself, although the adoption itself was a pretty near thing actually, but
Yeah.
the big town meeting debate was not, do we do it? It was who controls the money,
Mhm.
which is probably not a phenomenon that Reading is above. I'm sure there will be some.
Was it
you know,
town meeting eventually, did they decide or no?
Well, so town meeting ultimately, the CPA specifies that town meeting ultimately decides what to do with the money.
Yeah.
With very rare exceptions, ARPA being the big one that I'm aware of. Town meeting is the only thing that ever allocates money.
Yeah.
It's, traditional
Committee, right.
legislative power of the purse thing.
Committee recommends.
Right, the committee
Yes, the
recommends,
committee
but-
recommends.
But then the whole
Right.
town meeting.
Town
has to
meeting
vote on
could
it.
do something totally different if they wanted to, but that would be a lot of work and they'd probably like to
Or-
give that work to a committee.
I mean, I think in other communities, it's not that they do the work, they just say no.
Well, right,
And then
yes.
the item dies or
Yeah.
it comes back again to the next town meeting or whatever. I mean, it's not that they're not allocating, they can
Yeah.
vote up or down.
Right, and the money is still there for next year.
So no, so it's not the time for a town meeting person to say, hey, we need to do swing set at Sturgis Park. Okay,
Right,
so that's
but
way
that might be the
beforehand.
fight that Winchester had.
Well, yeah, or I think they had, in terms of who's on it, they also have a capital planning committee, which Reading doesn't have. Capital planning is done by the CFO, basically, and the town manager, and they just present it to us. That would be, this is a little bit of a digression, but actually, I think having CPA would be a nice compromise between creating a capital planning committee and not creating a capital planning committee. Because in some places, residents have a ton of input on capital planning. In Reading, most of the capital plan is spent on things like replacing dump trucks, which is not something that most of us are like. I mean, if the head of DPW says this, snowplow is at its end of life, I believe him. I'm not really an expert on the subject. A different pool of capital that would be allocated by the residents for residents' priorities, and that doesn't really require the same subject matter expertise of, the police department to talk about what kind of radios they need or something. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I know
digress.
like in other communities, you don't need the vote, but it goes in front of the warrant committee, it goes in front of the finance committee, it goes in front of the board of selectmen.
Right. Well, anything that goes in,
Select board.
anything that goes to town, any financial matter that goes to town meeting goes to the finance committee.
Right, so
first.
and then, and so then town meeting has the guidance of all of the other
Yeah.
boards, starting with CPA, but running through the
Yeah,
warrant finance,
Yeah.
select board.
Just because it's on the warrant, so like, just as
So if something's controversial, it's gonna have to be fleshed
it'll
out.
run the gauntlet, I know, yeah. All right, okay, let's
Celebration Trust, is that ACE?
No, I'm on the
mm,
Celebration Trust.
Oh, you are?
And
okay.
that is the money that's from the sale of the book that would end. And plus there's a little bit of money that was left over from the 350th
Oh,
in there, but I mean, so I'm happy to talk about it at the next meeting.
So will it be coming out for the part of the celebration of our whatever number year we are next year as a country?
The revolution, I
Yeah.
don't think so. Nothing was
350? No, 250.
250.
250, yeah.
I don't think anything has been requested.
So interestingly enough, I was at a housing authority meeting today, and they said that the state has given the housing authorities an extra $5 or $10 per resident to plan
An event?
events around the 250. Can you imagine?
Wow.
I was like, what? You have to be, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like
enough to get.
Katie, you could
I'm not saying-
comment on that, right?
Yes, yeah, they definitely sent out a notice saying anything that we wanted to do, whether it be an event, with some sort of entertainment, also food, ice cream social, anything related to the 250th celebration. And it has to happen between now and I think July of 2026.
I'll figure, so maybe you are gonna have something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
State funded Independence Day barbecue, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's traditional. give it that.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so let me write down Celebration Trust though. I mean, you can mention it to them. I don't know exactly what their angle would be, but at a minimum, I assume that's gonna
It's for any community event. It can be for a community event is what their money, so in the
Okay.
past, it's gone for like Christmas tree lighting,
Hmm.
the Lions Club. It's like, and it's an interesting thing. They can either make a grant that's just given freely, or they kind of do a loan for somebody doing something and then they can pay it back, like for groups that don't have like cash on hand
Mhm.
to do something like that, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you said event, that sounds like maybe their stuff sort of conspicuously doesn't overlap with CPA, because generally CPAs.
Oh, no, it doesn't
Things.
overlap with the CPA.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no,
No,
wait a second.
that's-
No, it could, I thought you were saying, I meant CPDC.
Right.
Event, so the CPA couldn't run an event.
No.
Okay, then no.
It does say for the preservation of recorded history. So
It does,
could
it
it be
does.
for the preservation of, say, a monument or something, like a Veterans Memorial Monument? Would
I don't know.
CPA be?
I think
permitted
maybe.
that?
I know that they did pay for like the little medallions that went on the gravestones here that were Revolutionary
Revolutionary
War,
War
Civil War, things like
veterans.
that. So I don't know. I'll find out to be sure.
All right, I mean, you can ask them if they're interested, that's another.
Okay.
way to
Yep.
put it. All right, so yes, a charter review, no, I don't think so. Climate advisory,
I
Sure,
would
yeah.
say yes.
I mean,
with
they're not-
environmental Stewardship.
right? I'm sure they are in favor of us preserving every, carbon dioxide absorbing plant we can find. So, sounds good.
I've never heard of commissioners of trust funds.
Yeah,
We manage all of the many trust funds that people have with the town.
yeah,
And the big one was the hospital, right?
right, which is funny, because we're never, ever gonna have a hospital.
I did a lot of research on Galen Parker, the one who gave the money for that, if you want to know.
Okay.
After the meeting.
Okay.
That is, yeah, that just sounds like that's out of scope here. So, I mean, unless, I don't know, do we want to talk about, say, this commissioner of trust funds ever going to spend anything, money on anything that CPA
I
would spend
don't
on?
know.
Matching, do they have any potential matching funds?
Okay, there we go, maybe.
Yeah,
It's possible. And this is gonna be a trust fund in effect, so.
Yeah.
no way. All right, and then, yeah, CPDC, we already said yes.
My gosh, we're
We
only up
are
to
at
C.
Yeah, I know. And then, yes, right, conservation, that's a no-brainer. I mean, that might be like more of an update. Some of these obviously are committees that we did already talk to.
But, we go back, I
Um,
would do Council of Aging, even though it's not, just trying to get the word out.
Right,
Right.
that's just, yes, it's not, right, it's not that they're specifically focused on CPA stuff, it's just that they are an extremely,
Involved.
valuable perspective.
Yeah, same thing with
We
cultural
we want their
council.
perspective.
And they vote.
Well, you're not wrong. Um,
Still,
yeah, I mean, cultural council's another interesting one, but I don't see why not. Gosh, custodian of soldiers and sailors' graves.
They must be part of, is that part of the library, or not library, cemetery?
Cemetery, you would think.
No.
I'm actually clicking through on on my screen. I'll tell you what I found. There is a guy. It is a person, not a committee. Raymond Boyd.
Oh,
Yeah, you know
So
something
he
about this?
basically helps out a lot with like the Veterans Day and Memorial Day celebrations. He does a lot at the senior center too. He'll connect with like police and fire, stuff like that. But yeah, he's mostly overseen by veterans, by Will.
All right. Finance committee, obviously.
Work District Commission, obviously,
District and
Historical Commission.
Historical Commission. Who named these things? Sorry. I'm sure you're probably tired of
next?
people mixing the two up. All right, then a housing authority, obviously.
Yep.
Uh,
Relations.
Are they still? That's not a thing
They
anymore,
sunset a
no.
while ago. Should probably unpublish that.
Take them off.
Yeah, I mean,
Can't meet
that's,
with them if they don't exist.
I mean, the sort of the spiritual successor of that is PAIR. Um,
Here?
Partners and Allies for Inclusive Reading. It's basically a group of volunteers organized by the Director of Equity and Social Justice, upper class. So my wife would do it more often, except for the fact that they tend to meet on Wednesdays, and so does FinCom. We've had far too many conflicts. All right. Now there's some regional committees. That's
How we do is the Killam Buildings Committee still alive, or did that go
oh
over
yeah,
to the
very much
building-
so. They have to oversee things. So
Okay, so yeah, I would go to them because of playgrounds.
oh okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't fund the playground, right?
Is that right?
I thought this.
Yeah, I
isn't
didn't
the
know if they
playground-
moved to the Permanent Building Committee, or is it still the Killam School Building
So
Committee?
strictly speaking, the Killam School Building Committee, it's not a subcommittee of the Permanent Building Committee. I don't think exactly. It's certainly not. It's not in the sense of it does contain a subset of the Permanent Building Committee plus representatives from other committees.
Okay,
And I think maybe
it
some
does stand by
appointments at
itself.
large.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is also, I mean, it's interesting. It's like they post as like Permanent Building Committee dash recal or whatever. Seen those postings, so like but they're not necessarily chaired by, I think one is chaired by the same chair as Permanent Building and the other is not. So go figure.
Park sunset as well.
Oh yeah,
Wonder why that's still there.
because if you don't change it, it doesn't change.
Hard to keep a website up to date,
Yeah.
just saying.
All right.
Okay, so Killam Building.
Okay, yes, all right, so this is, so, yeah, we can ask Killam if they want to,
Reading Council recap, we should do those.
wait, where did we?
Permanent Building Committee is next.
So,
So we just want to do them in the sense that if we didn't
Yeah.
get them with the Killam.
Didn't we just skip past about half a dozen
uh,
The regional-
between K and P?
okay, so,
Metropolitan,
so the regional ones, I don't
I don't
think
think we need
that
to
works.
do.
The moderator, much like the custodian of children's heroes' graves, is not a committee, it's an individual.
And Mystic Valley is also regional then.
Regional.
Okay, yeah.
Park doesn't exist, and that got thrown. So yeah, we moved a little too quickly, but we did in fact cover them all. Sense of ruling them out. ARPA, right back is definitely also gone. You know,
So that's 3 so far.
defunct committees. Recalc is technically defunct too, but then this doesn't have the permanent building committee for recal. So like, I think recal permanent building committee is what they recall
Yeah, the Permanent Building Committee for recap.
Well, the rec committee, of course.
committee. Yeah, not sure if how that's gonna work with folks. We'll see. May or may not. None of these committees are, of course, obliged to put us on their agenda.
Now, Recreation Committee, we have Eric representing, but it seems to me that there's an awful lot of groups under recreation that we should reach out to. Soccer, baseball, pickleball, basketball, wrestling, etc. And, you know, all of those booster clubs would be people that we should do outreach to.
Yeah, no, that's, and I think we can
There are a
ask,
ton- There are a ton of them,
yes. Yeah,
but I agree.
Yeah, because those are people would go.
Well, and I want to make a note here, by the way, like this is a very ambitious outreach that we're compiling here. At some point, if we don't get to all of this, but some sort of, you know, a ballot question committee would presumably also be interested in the same sorts of outreach if we don't get to it. So I want to call
And
it
then
out.
I
If we
think
don't get to,
we
you know,
put the
every,
comprehensive list and then we can.
Yeah.
We can float it to the top.
right, we can hit as many of these as we can, and if somebody coming after us wants to hit more of them, more power to them.
And we could do them by Zoom if they have Zooms. They don't have to be-
Yeah, most do, I think, at this point, but I don't know of a committee that has it doesn't. need to-
Historic committee doesn't have Zoom.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of. I feel like that's a little too on the nose.
And we write with pencil and paper. No.
Right. All right.
Will and they
Please, I was
will.
gonna say, please unscroll the minutes of the last meeting. Back on topic
Got a
here.
clip.
All right, I don't know about coalition, but so, likewise, retirement board, probably not relevant.
Yeah, school committee is the
Um,
next one.
Yeah, school committee, certainly.
Select board, we have a report to go to.
Right,
them.
right, right. Yes, I was gonna say that's literally why we exist.
Town
Is the
forest is a
Simon's Way
yes.
one also sunset?
Yes.
Okay. Town forest.
Town forest, I've already spoken to.
Yep.
Trails committee, I didn't manage to set up an appointment with. We should maybe try them again.
Well, seems like a natural fit.
I don't think we need Veterans Memorial Fund. Is
No.
that a real committee?
What is looking for?
Bylaws, regulations and policy. No, so good. And then I would put on there the school PTOs.
Okay, so now we're off the topic of town committees, PTOs.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems more, yeah. My own instinct off the top of my head is that the consulting with sort of official town bodies is definitely would probably be this committee's priority. Whereas, making a tour of the PTOs and sports booster groups would probably be more of a ballot question committee's thing. I mean, we're welcome to get input. As far as I understand our charge, we're welcome to get input from anybody who could help us come to a better conclusion and give a better report to the select board. So, and certainly all these committees are on that list.
So it's only 20, right? Am I
Only
getting,
20.
did I count? Well, there's 6 of us. right?
Yeah. That's true.
We already cover some of them, so it's probably less than 20.
So like
I mean,
3
you
per
could also
person.
inquire, you don't have to, you don't have to invite yourself, but you could say, this is what we're doing, and if you have time and interest, we'd love to come give you a little 10-minute spiel.
Yeah. In terms of doing that outreach, just thinking about what's the simplest way to do it. We can,
Standard form email for
Yeah.
starters.
Yeah.
Same thing goes to home.
and I mean, I can write people emails.
And I think we need to have, something that we,
Support.
support document.
Yes.
What I was gonna say.
There you go.
You said it right, might have better.
So if I wanted to add some edits to that one you did, would I just tell you?
I think so, but we'll get to that, I
Okay,
think,
all right.
we'll, and at some point, I imagine, we're gonna do the report, and then maybe we have a brief PowerPoint that collects, the points, the high level points for
yeah.
each of the pillars. That, not every committee is gonna need that level of
Mhm.
information, but for the bigger committees, I think something like that's gonna be very helpful, and then maybe it becomes 5 slides to the ones that aren't wanting to go in as deep.
I was just gonna ask, I forgot, I just remembered that I was gonna ask, should we make a slide that's like an overview of the CPA? Like, how the bones of it,
Yeah.
like when you first started, how many communities are part of it, like just a generic CPA one, so people understand it. So I feel like,
I mean, this is starting to segue into brainstorming what would go into the slide deck, because I feel like we have
oh no,
that's totally in scope here. Obviously, given any slide deck, we don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
show every slide to every committee.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
make a larger one and then show
We can
all of it
choose.
to town meeting, then show subsets of it to
Mhm.
different groups.
well, you have done some with the financial, how the numbers flow like,
Yeah.
if we did this, if we did this, if we did this.
Yeah,
Which is really
those
valuable.
would definitely be things. So, all right, so I'm going to start writing down things that should go into this slide deck. Although I suspect this is also going to look an awful lot like the outline of the CPA report. In the sense that it's going to cover a lot of the same things
Yeah, that's great.
of CPA.
And I, you know, we do have the advantage of the Natick material, both
Yeah.
in terms of the report, but then they also have their slide deck that they presented at town meeting.
And Winchester too, right? I mean, that's pretty, they're both pretty similar.
Yeah, and they start, you know, they start out
Yep.
with the explanation.
And I thought it was interesting that one of the things that was in our packet talking about how the CPA people are working on some changes, such as figuring out new stream of revenue and good things to share, because some people will point out, well, it's less match now, and so.
So, all right. So in terms of outline stuff, let me grab the CPA report. I'm just pulling up the Natick CPA report.
So it's the Parker Tavern owned by a nonprofit? Yeah, because they do say renovation of nonprofit owned historic buildings.
Awesome, okay.
And so and then I've seen a bunch of communities that had not 501c3, so as long as it's like
Okay.
the running
Okay.
antiquities. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, no, and the same thing, the church.
Friends of Parker Tavern, okay, okay, I didn't know it included churches, I didn't know
But
if
it's,
that's religious,
well,
but I guess it's
nonprofit owned, I
it's
guess
the
is,
building.
it's the building, potentially, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to do more.
Okay,
I didn't put the church on because I thought that was gonna be more.
yeah,
But and I can do a little bit more research on,
and I can ask too, I have a historical meeting Wednesday.
yeah, because I know Belmont did a church in theirs.
Alright.
Right, sorry.
This is relevant for updating the, yeah, so when Sarah raised the question to me about the one pager, I tried to, it's like, we should probably do document editing in the meeting rather than serial communication over email. Sorry about being paranoid about OML.
No,
That's
We
right.
don't need.
Yep.
Uh,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, like too many people. on there
Exactly,
now.
exactly. If a majority of us were to, discuss something over email, that would obviously be bad.
Yeah.
So it's not. Okay, so which thing are we talking about right now? Are we talking about the,
You were looking
the
at other groups
one-pager-
outside of the commissions, right?
okay, so yeah, there's,
Do you want to wrap that up and then?
yeah, there's some other groups outside of the commissions. We've talked about sports organizations, we talked about PTOs.
You
Um,
wanted to meet with like the town manager and was that what you were saying? Some people, town government or, no? thought-
No, what I was
Interesting.
saying was among the town committees, sports organizations, PTOs, I think it's most imperative for this committee to interact with the very first one of those, that is to get input from other town committees.
Okay.
Because that's more, I mean, all of these interactions, of course, can be soliciting input, but I feel like the town committees, some of them in particular, are gonna have more to offer in terms of input, and that's what we
data.
need at this stage,
Yeah.
is we are putting together information so we can have a report, the select board, on consideration of the CPA. But yeah, so what else, but while we're brainstorming people to whom we should be doing outreach or could be doing outreach, are there historically oriented organizations in town? That seems like the kind of thing for which there would be.
Reading antiquities.
I mean, yeah,
About
Reading
today.
Antiquarians.
Reading Antiquities?
You mean Reading Antiquarian Society?
Yeah. that one.
Okay.
Yes. Reading Antiquities is not a thing. It has it's the right prefix, yeah. But Reading Antiquarian Society, that's,
AKA Friends of Parker Tavern.
yes. We probably will care very much about the validity of that one bullet on the presentation,
Yes.
whether you actually potentially, whether this could potentially fund restoration or other work at Parker Tavern. So we should definitely sort that one out.
Martha found an example in Winchester.
Yeah, no, it's other communities do it as long as it's 501c3. I mean, it's actually in the
Nice.
Natick presentation.
Okay, cool.
And then the other one that I was uncertain about was churches. And whether like you could fix when they had to do the
Water.
big fundraiser at Old South Church a number of years ago. And a number of communities, if it's a historic building,
Okay.
does it even though it's a church and it wouldn't necessarily meet the 501c3 requirements, it meets the nonprofit requirements. So I think the nonprofit is, you can't go to my house, my
Right,
historic
yes.
house and put on new things.
Three other groups I'm thinking of that may be at the level of recreation and school PTOs would be Quantapowhat Players, Colonial Chorus, and Walkable Reading. Some of them having historic buildings that might need work, and I don't know where Walkable Reading fits in are they a sports organization or just a ad hoc committee perhaps? And you notice Carlo just joined.
Yes. Welcome,
Thanks.
Carlo.
I sorry to interrupt. Walkable Reading's defunct, I thought,
Yes.
or it isn't.
I think I've seen things telling about walks they're doing once a week on one day. I forget which day.
Yeah, I just can't remember if it's recognized organization. I could have sworn Ace or Allen said, but I could be wrong. I know they were a big part of it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
'Cause
So,
when we were doing liaison assignments, we talked about Walkable Reading, and I could have sworn someone in the audience said it doesn't exist, but I can't remember.
Okay.
that also seems like something where it's questionable whether you need a liaison assignment or not for that.
Right, correct.
Yeah, so whether they're meeting or not, I mean, if all they're doing is taking walks, that's not something that,
Yeah.
select board doesn't have a, liaison to, sports organizations, for instance, in town. Context, backing up a second, I don't know, I think you probably just joined. I don't know if you were able to watch anything before this, but. we're
No,
on
I
the
just got home and I'm all sweaty, so I didn't want to show up.
Okay. That's understandable. So on the topic of outreach, the first question I asked, which you've now spent half an hour on, is to whom should we be doing outreach? Who should we talk to? Are there, other groups that we should talk to and get input from and offer information about the CPA to, prior to making our reports to select board and town meeting? We went through a list of all the town committees. A bunch of them, there's a bunch of them that do things that are CPA adjacent. There are a bunch of others which are just maybe not directly CPA related, but are very important perspectives that, we should, Council on Aging, for example, is not,
Right.
but on the other hand, like that's an important group in town and I would love to get their input.
Well, I agree. I think, and I'm guessing you've said this, we have our respective boards and committees represented from us, right? Finance, historic, affordable housing and so on, and select board but I think, yeah, we ask that they put it on the agenda just to have a discussion. I think we reach out to the big boards. I mean, like, should ZBA, let's say, have a say? Probably not, because they deal with appeals, but they're an important board. But, again, I know what you mean. Like Celebration Committee, should they have some input? Board of Library Trustees, should they have some input? I guess.
Yeah, I think if I remember,
Do you want to read?
Celebration Trust Committee was in there. So what did we come up with? So,
They do have an element for historic preservation.
oh yeah, Celebration Committee in particular, part of their mission, according to the website, has to do with the preservation of history. So,
Historical artifacts.
yes, so that's certainly close enough. Library trustees is another example where it's like, that's not, I mean, they are in a historic building, but more generally, they are one of the 3 elected boards in town. And I
Right.
would want to visit them just like I want to visit the school committee, just like obviously, our big report is the select board.
Yeah, do we involve RMLD, for instance?
Yeah, I don't think,
They didn't make the cut, but
No, that's fine, but like, you know, they were elected as well. That's the only reason I mentioned it. I agree.
yeah,
They, you know, as much, we need
Yeah.
as much input and as direct input as we can get. Right? Everyone's gonna have their opinions on this. Like I said, I was on the negative side in the beginning. And those are the people. So when you say outreach, I don't want to say it's a knee-jerk reaction for conservatives to be against this, but because it's a tax, I would say the knee-jerk reaction is no. Me being a known conservative, so I think that's where a lot of outreach should happen. You know, I can talk about it. I'm not a registered Republican, but every now and then I go to the Republican town committees just to say hello. I can mention it there, you know, because people hear the word tax, they don't like that word. No one does.
so this is, so one thing that we already observed as we were starting to brainstorm things and the list got very long, was that some of the things we're coming up with here might not be for this committee to reach out to, but a subsequent ballot question committee might want to reach out to them because it's more of a political, it's more of, this committee is supposed to be putting a report together. So I want to emphasize things where we would gather, input from people, versus like going out to, all the various sports booster groups and get them to, mobilize them to vote. That's a ballot question thing. So certainly the Democratic and Republican town committees seem like must visits for a ballot question committee.
Yeah.
Sure about us though.
Were all the team organizations mentioned? Baseball, softball, football, you know, all that stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, probably more for the ballot committee.
Yeah, but yeah, so you know, I'm late because I had lessons, but yeah, I think you guys did a good job of,
Right. I was gonna say, I don't even, obviously, you didn't list Reading Pickleball Players Association, but heck yes, that would be a,
I had it on my
uh,
list.
sports, that would be a sports group that we would wanna,
I think we got
yes.
20 commissions total, right, that we decided we're gonna get some data from.
yeah, we'll reach out to. I mean, obviously, it's up to the chair of each committee whether they want to put us on any of their agendas, but some of these, like we did, some folks here had interest in the permanent building committees, of which we sort of have three: Killam, Recal, and the main one. Um, uh, don't know if it makes sense to reach out to, but we can reach out to all of them and ask if they're interested in hearing more from us and take it from there. But yeah, then yes, affordable housing, cemetery because of historical preservation, celebration trust because of historic preservation, bylaw. We need to start having conversations with them about forming a community preservation committee because that is a committee would be created by passing a bylaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to have a community preservation committee that makes recommendations to town meeting. And this is something where, and I mean, maybe we don't need to, this committee might or might not make a recommendation on this. We certainly could, because I think it's part of the adoption process, is we've talked to other communities which either voted on CPA and then set up a community preservation committee after adopting CPA, or did them both at the same time. So when town meeting voted on, in Winchester, when town meeting voted on putting CPA on the ballot, they also voted on a change to Winchester's bylaws to create a community preservation committee.
Huh.
So obviously their bylaw committee must have been involved because they wrote a bylaw. And
Okay, it's good to know. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
The thinking being, let's get it up and running immediately as opposed to in steps.
Yeah.
yeah, because if
And-
you,
And there was also a political hullabaloo, as you were saying, about what, that was the more important subject politically, was the composition of the bylaw, of
the
the.
preservation committee, yes,
Yeah.
apparently the, getting some people on side for supporting CPA adoption in Winchester required,
And being on the committee.
well, frankly, yes. But it required answering questions about the composition of the community preservation committee because they were concerned about who would be advising town meeting on how to spend this money. And I'm
Yeah,
sure
good-
people will
Good
have.
points. Yeah, good. I agree. Good points. Yep.
So, yeah, it's funny though, because, Mike, the Winchester Select Board member who came to us, back in the fall, I guess. You know, he expressed regret about having done it that way. So I don't know if,
Because Natick did it after the vote.
yeah,
Did he say he expressed regret because it took so much, became a little contentious and it took so much longer? I forget why, what his reason
I mean,
was.
it didn't take longer in the sense of like Winchester will spend CPA money sooner as a result of this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you don't do this, well, okay, then the town can start collecting the surcharge at the, you know, for the next fiscal year after you adopt it. But then you're not, you know, you might take more time to allocate. Did we lose Carlo? No, he's still there. A video went off. Okay, sorry. When you turn off your camera, it minimized your picture and I was afraid we lost you.
Oh,
But no,
sorry. I'm just getting a drink. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
yeah, no worries, no worries. You were not obliged to keep your camera on as far as I'm concerned. I just wanted to make sure we hadn't lost you.
Carlo mentioned something that I was thinking about, and I'll say it, which is, should we have on our primary list that, you know, we try to go forward with ourselves, or sort of deferred to a later day and perhaps a different group, interface with business groups. And I guess just a couple of thoughts for starters, which is, that's the no camp, or the potential, or the likely no camp, which we've been advised to kind of not lose a lot of energy on by the coalition. Secondly, is that it may be dependent on what we recommend. If we exclude business, commercial from the levy,
Right.
maybe we skip it. If we attempt to include it, maybe we need to interface it and get a check on whether or not we're gonna draw a lot of opposition.
I mean,
just
yeah.
thoughts. I don't know what to do with them, but they're questions really.
Yeah, so apologies to the note taker for doing agenda stuff out of order, but on the subject of recommended surcharges and exemptions.
Yeah.
We have, you know, touched briefly on the fact that, commercial property can be exempted completely. And indeed, my own, speaking for myself, my own suspicion is that the amount of revenue, because Reading's commercial real estate base is so small, the amount of revenue that we generated by including it would be not very big, and the amount of political fuss generated by including it would be very large. So this would be making adoption much more contentious in exchange for not much more money. I'm sure that if we asked businesses, should they be taxed, they will say no. We can go through that exercise, but I don't, you know, I'm gonna
So
I'm gonna call that one.
this is falling into the one versus something more than one camp for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Are we gonna be voting on that at some meeting?
I mean, we are, yes, and I mean, we shouldn't vote on it until we get to a meeting where we said on the agenda that we're gonna vote on it. Right now, we just said we're gonna discuss it, so we're not
Okay.
taking any votes on that tonight.
Okay, but we
Um,
need to vote on the amount, and then there's also all the different
All the
things you can do, the
exemptions,
exemption
right,
amount.
yes, right.
Okay,
As far as I
Yeah,
can
well,
tell,
we'll be
everybody
correct.
exempts the first 100,000. There's nothing to dislike about that. That's just like
Mhm.
trying to make the tax, you know, slightly more progressive in terms of, you know, the less your house costs, the lower your effective tax rate. Tiny difference, but it is a difference that is gonna be pretty, you know, widely supported.
Okay,
Then,
I
yeah,
think you've probably answered.
Yeah, and then whether
Yeah.
you're qualifying seniors and income eligible residents being exempt.
right, yes, yeah.
so we don't have to put on the agenda everything, we're just gonna say we're gonna vote on our recommendations.
Recommended surcharges and exemptions,
And,
yes.
and I would hope that part of the outreach, you know, to some of the larger committees or the committees that have more, you know, more to offer in terms of guidance is around asking about the 1% or 1.5%. So that we can sort of say in the report that, you know, that we made our recommendation based on the input of these varied
So that's a question we're gonna propose, like, what do you think about
Well, I mean,
1%?
you know, you look at this,
1.5.
you know, you look at this, you look at the slide deck from Natick and they have the different maths,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and, you know, and I think that was, you know, an early part of their conversation was, well, you know, what are our choices and, you know, I mean, I think we want to get some input. You know, the select board will have some input, the
Mhm.
finance team will have to input. I mean, and it all could push us, you know, to a lower number, but, you know, having that kind of conversation and discussion, I think, before we do the final vote is important.
So this is actually a good question for topic of outreach, because I'm starting to think about this. I'm like, well, this is it's gonna take a long time to talk to 20 committees. I'm not sure that we would necessarily get to that before we need to really like put a report, you know, down to, you know, put virtual pen to paper and produce a written report. And a written report would certainly have to include some kind of recommendation about the surcharge. I do note that Natick's presentation includes the proposed percentage.
What would happen if we did a tentative? In other words, we did take a vote. And at least it's a sense of the committee. And it's put out as a tentative number. In other words, not a final number. But the reason for doing that is to have something solid that you're giving
Yeah.
out, as opposed to something which is sort of floating.
Right.
Range.
And there've been, yeah, I mean, there've been,
I'm just trying to put myself in the chair of someone we're presenting to.
you're not trying to make your audience do math. You don't want the audience to be sitting and thinking like, all right, well, if it was 1%, it'd be this, it's one like, just give them a number, like,
Yeah, I'm trying to simplify it.
this
make
is what it would
straightforward.
cost, this is what the town would get. No, I do
You
think
could say
that's.
it's not final because we're still kind
Once
of
it's
doing.
out, it's final. Sorry.
I mean,
You
it
can
is,
always,
it is.
it's like you can always
If
come
if it
down, you
were,
can never go
right,
up.
I mean, it's not, if, well, I don't know about that, but, I mean, the thing is that I would recommend it down because I don't see it going up, period, under, no matter what we do. So, you know, if 1.5% surcharge isn't gonna pass, then proposing it and going down doesn't, I don't know, I guess there's a psychology thing here, you know, anchoring or whatever, but I'm not
And
really,
it could very
interested
well
in
be
being
that
that
we'll come
complicated.
back to that it will be, you know, there will all coalesce around the 1%. But, you know, in talking to the varying different committees, when you can see the difference between a 1% or 1.5% and 2%. You know, I mean, Winchester made the choice and did 2%, Natick made the
1.5,
choice
yeah.
and did 1%, you know, and some of it is gonna be driven by, you know, there's gonna be a lot of, you know, hopes and wishes
Yeah, no,
on CPA and, you know, and, you know, as you said, how much got spent during, you know, X number of years, it kind of worked out to 1% without any real historic or affordable housing ads on it.
yeah,
And so, you know.
right, no, you're, okay, so I get your point here, and what I'm taking away from this is that we should maybe prioritize outreach to committees that would have input on
On
the
that,
surcharge
yeah.
amount in particular, which is gonna be more or less our committees, the ones that would be more directly
And
involved in
finance
the,
and
yes, and finance.
select board.
I think I know the.
Joe, can I say something?
Of course.
I like Sandy's idea, but I guess for me, you know, wearing two hats still, right? The devil and the angel. It's the percentage is important, but for me, the reimbursement is just as important, if not more.
Mhm.
Given that we can't say the reimbursement year to year from the state, the match, whatever you want to call it, it kind of, I don't want to say, when we vote, right? When we go to vote, we're voting on a number and the exemption and whatever else, right? And people say yes or no. And then if it's 1.5, 1.25, 3, whatever it is, if the reimbursement keeps on going down, the rebate, I forget what we're calling it. If
Yeah.
the match keeps on going down because more of us join, is that 0.25, whatever which way you want to go, 0.25 increment, because that's easy. How much of an impact is that? That's the unanswered question, right? I love the idea of going 1.5, but will that pass? Are we going to sit down on November whatever and say, oh shit, we should have did 1, right? So that's tough. I don't have an answer for that. I like Sandy's idea. At my last liaison report, I just mentioned we started talking about a rate, but we haven't, formalized it yet. So I think doing some outreach in conjunction with, here is the current reimbursement. Am I saying it right? Reimbursement?
Match.
Is that what we'll call it? Match? Okay, here's the current match. And it's probably not going to go up, guys. So use that as your benchmark. And then it could possibly go down. I could be wrong on this.
And I would just say, Carlo, that, I mean, part of the match and why it's been dropping, and it's dropped a pretty significant amount in the last couple of years, is that there, you know, the mortgage rates in the real estate market has cooled because, part of where the state match comes from is the real estate transfer fees. And those fees have been kind of
Right,
in the
yeah.
tank. So, I think the match is gonna be driven by how the real estate market is doing and whether there's an increase or decrease in the amount of sales activities. And we're kind of at a low point right now. And so the match is matching that or tracking with that. So, hope would be, even though more communities will have passed the act, we hope, that when the real estate market returns to more of a normal stream, you would see the match go up. And so you can kind of, historically, people have been sort of conservatively saying a certain percent. But yeah, it ebbs and flows, and you can look at, kind of like what you try to do in projecting whether the mortgage rates are going up or down. You can look at historical trends and, what the market rate is. But, I
Right,
do
but
think
the more of us that join, doesn't that cut into the pie more too?
it does, absolutely, but that's the bigger factor, I think, right now is the fact that the real estate transfers are so low.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's a good point. I don't disagree with that at all, and I know it's true. But I think it's not gonna go back to the high amounts. I'm pretty
Oh,
comfortable
we'll
with
never
that.
go back to like the historic, like when the early ones passed and they were getting,
100% match.
yeah, but
the
I
first
do
couple
think you
years.
could be in the mid 20s or high 20s at some point, depending upon, again, what the real estate market is doing.
Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah,
would be
we-
great.
Yeah, Sarah, I
Although I
think
just
is,
want to, in the packet, I asked Jackie to include this, the CPA Coalition's annual meeting notes. And in it, they say, as we work with our legislative partners to advocate for potential new revenue opportunities, we've also focused our legislative efforts on defending CPA legislation. The coalition continues to testify against bills that they were trying to pass to divert CPA revenue. Blah, blah, blah. To address some of these concerns, we're working on a modernization bill, that's in quotes, for the CPA program for our next session based on feedback from local CPCs, municipal officials, legislatures, and our nonprofit partners. So it's also a good time to reach out to our legislators and speak in favor of CPA and them finding new sources of funding. So they're working on it, so.
yeah. So it does look like, I mean, it's a whole different political question about what, and I don't claim to be an expert on state politics in terms of what could or couldn't pass there. But yes, there is, I think the point that there is that it's possible for the state to add new revenue to the CPA trust fund, which would then cause the reimbursement rate to go back up above, 20% again, where it's currently thereabouts. So, yeah, we'll see how that unfolds, but it does mean that going back a few years and using historical rates from recent times, not going back too far, because yeah, back when there were 50 communities instead of 200, obviously you had 4 times as much money to go around. But
And I would also recommend, like I did, I think last meeting, to follow their Facebook page and their LinkedIn page, because both of those have been started to expand their outreach to people. All of the positive things that the CPA Act is doing. So,
So,
Um,
so back to the question, well, I would agree that the match is a, you know, really significant thing. It's a wild card, and it's not within any control that we have. The only thing that we get to decide is the percentage. So the question is whether or not we want to defer that decision much later in our proceedings after we survey folks of interest in the community, committees and so forth. Or a subset of those committees that, you know, do more of the numbers work and the finance work.
let me,
I don't know, my sense about it is that we need to kind of come to terms with it and then educate around the number as opposed to try and get consensus on the number.
I want to ask you a question about timelines, which Sarah asked me before the meeting if we know when we're presenting the select board, and of course we don't yet. We have talked about presenting to fall town meeting. How do people feel about either having or not having a recommended match when presented to town meeting in November? I know what I think, but I want to know what other people think. Like, if we
Excuse
do
me.
or don't have, like, do we have to have a recommended match percentage in mind before we go to town to give the informational presentation to town meeting in November?
Assuming we'll be the match?
No,
the
not our
recommendations.
match, surcharge amount. Surcharge
Okay.
amount. Sorry, did I say match?
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
you know what you meant.
Yes,
Maybe
I mean,
just say
do
what
we have
the
a
range
recommended?
is for all the people in the CPA.
Well, I don't want to talk about the whole
Our peer
range.
communities are at this range.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I have this information, what our peer communities are, but
Look it up.
I
So
don't.
your question is, do we think there needs to be a number for preliminary presentation this fall?
Right. Yes, so, yeah.
What do you think, Martha?
Can I speak?
Of course.
My vote is that we definitely need a number for the spring town meeting when they have to pass it. But I think we should give them a couple of choices for the fall town meeting to introduce the concept. And what I did on my presentations to open space folks was give them 3 options, like 2, 1.5, and 1, and used Joe's numbers to say, you know, what kind of money those involve, so that people can look at them and see the dollar amounts for a couple of the choices. I think no point in putting numbers up for 3 if we think there's no way we would ever present 3.
Yeah, I mean, I did look it up, by the way. Our peer communities do in fact literally range from 0.5 to 3. So
Okay,
that is,
so there we
that does not,
go.
like, our peer communities do us, our current list of peer communities, which as an aside is a bit dated, and I have a
Yeah.
running discussion with the finance committee about how we can get that number, because like some of them have changed, I mean, you know,
Yeah. Mhm.
a bit since they were added to our peer community list. But yeah, that they don't help at all here in terms of narrowing things down.
I think it's also important to mention that the rate can be changed by town meeting. And that can also,
Actually,
go ahead.
it requires it requires a referendum, like a ballot question to change the.
But you can change it, and you can even pause it.
That is not a thing. I think we figured, did we figure that out last time? I thought we figured that out last
I
time.
thought Chase said there was a community that paused it.
No, I don't think, I thought this
Good.
came up last time.
Okay. Sure, we're looking at
Was
the
adoption
database.
of the-
Do you want me to ask Alan if he would consider, because it can't be a warrant article, right?
No,
But
it would
if-
be, yeah, it'd be under the article for reports.
Yeah, if Alan, right, if Alan would let us, because getting a pulse of town meeting in the fall, I think would really help uh have, our discussion to what we formalize, and that doesn't mean we can't voice our opinions from now until November amongst ourselves, but I think for me it would be beneficial, because the to me the body of town meeting is more liberal than conservative. So it'd be nice to see if, 150 people show up, hopefully, out of 192, and they engage, in conversation. But we don't want it to go for a night. Obviously, that's a downfall. Is we don't want it to go for a whole night. I don't think, not yet. Um, so that's something that I think is worth entertaining.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think for the fall, what's being proposed and what I would propose to Alan and I can certainly reach out to Alan, is to, ask to give a report. Reports are not debated.
Okay,
So-
just a report. Okay,
Exactly. There'd be nothing to, if there's no question to vote on, town meeting.
right.
So,
Yeah, okay, but how do we? Because I think the input is going to be crucial. How do we, before April? How do we get input?
tell people
Well,
to email us.
we started this meeting by looking for input from an array of committees. And we came up with about 20, and maybe there'll be a subset of that we really kind of focus in on. So that's one way to do it. But what Martha was suggesting is putting out a range of numbers that we're considering and looking for a read, I think, from town meeting in the fall.
Could it be an instructional motion?
Maybe I read too much into that.
Oh, gosh. So
That somebody friendly,
Margaret, I mean, well, a bunch of us are on town meeting.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
put in an instructional motion.
I
But I'm
don't
not
recommend
sure-
doing an instructional motion because they often get cut off and you don't ever get to them. I think
Or you get to them
Joe's
on-
idea of a report at the beginning and just informing people about it is better.
I mean,
right?
we can
Because then how do you
certainly-
get the
You
input
should get,
about?
right, yeah, Carlos question, which is a fair one, is
Yeah.
like, how do we get input back? How do we get feedback? I mean, I
Could you do a
think
survey?
we could do a survey, like, here's a Google form, tell us what you think. That's totally allowed. It's not scientific, obviously, but like.
Right, give
none of this is
give all the
science.
town meeting members a form and they can choose to fill it out that
Right,
night or
give
not.
people a QR code they can
Yeah,
scan.
There you go. Look
Go.
at that.
do that, yeah, so there are ways to get some info.
Sometimes town meeting has done a straw poll without
That's-
an actual vote.
That happened once and Alan kind of did that, I'm not gonna say under duress, but it was a very extraordinary circumstance. And he kind of indicated that he wasn't planning to make a habit of it. So
Okay.
I wouldn't,
Yeah, kind of like the idea of a QR code popping up at the
Right.
end saying if you want to give us, if
Yeah.
you want to give the committee feedback,
right.
answer
It can
the
even,
survey.
Google form can even have a radio button, check boxes of which, rate or rates you would support.
Yeah.
And again, that's not scientific, it's not a vote.
No, but it did something.
But it does give people, and, I mean, the key thing would not just be like, do you, 1 or 1.5, it would be why.
Yeah.
And feel like 1, because there's no way in heck my neighbors are gonna vote for this, or 1.5, because there's no way in heck we're gonna afford we're gonna, put a dent in affordable housing without it.
But it could be interesting to do something like that and basically then hold our vote the next, the next reasonable.
Right, discuss and vote on that recommendation.
Right after
Yeah.
town meeting, and then anybody from town meeting that's really.
Yeah.
Hept one way or the other shows up.
Yeah, so where I think this is going is this is going towards a report to the select board early in 2026. Where we would finalize some of our recommendations after presenting to town meeting in November and after going to various committees in the fall. I do kind of like the part of having all of the fall to do this, because not a lot gets done during the summer. And then everybody's busy in the fall.
Right, and then we've got it
Too much gets done in the
in
fall.
front of it's ready to go and relevant to the spring town meeting.
Yeah.
And then the ballot committee can start after the report gets presented to the select board and we
Yeah.
end.
All right, so, okay.
That
so-
answers the timeline question.
Yes, no, that's good information on timeline. Actually, let me write some of this down in my own notes here. Early 26 for inclusion on. So really, the timeline is driven by when the select board would be reviewing the warrant for town meeting. And we'd want to be before that. The April warrant.
Yeah, so it would seem like we'd want to be as early in January as possible, or by January 15th.
I think I recall that it's like a 60-day clock.
Yeah,
60-day cycle
to-
between,
Are you thinking about between town, you're thinking about
the
between
election,
town meeting
yeah,
and the election,
yeah.
right? There is, however, another clock that has to do with like closing, when the select board closes the warrant before
Right.
town meeting, which is what I was thinking of there. Nations in.
we usually close it about 30 to 45 days before town meeting.
So if town meeting is usually end of April or middle of April.
Usually end of April.
So then that would be, like, you'd be okay if you finish it by March 1st, but I think you really want to be in January. So
I
while
agree.
the warrant-
We don't want to have the select board agenda get too full and they bump us off, and suddenly we've missed our deadline. So
Right,
we
I mean,
wanna-
we could, yes, we
try
could
to
still get on
go
the town meeting. Sorry?
We want to try to go earlier than later.
Yes.
Is there any concern about doing it in front of, so our town election will be in March?
Town elections are
Early April.
first Tuesday of
early
April, yeah,
April
or
7th,
Tuesday after the first Monday in April, I think.
April 7th.
So there's no
Town meeting
concern
is
about it,
April 27th.
about having this issue in front of the select board during the election cycle?
I think we would, I would try to get this, I would, just because because of Martha's concern about the select board can get very busy.
Yeah.
And as Carl is well aware, of course. That's a bigger concern for me personally, is making sure that we get onto the select board's agenda and get a, bigger hearing with the select board, ideally not at 11 PM at the end of a contentious night, or whatever.
So is
So-
January a good time, or are they starting budget stuff then?
They review budget in December, and then full committee does budget in January, and then finance committee does budget in March.
Why are we doing it so late? I'm sorry, I was looking something up. We couldn't do it like in October or November.
So the thought is, working back, so if we want to get town meeting's input on this recommended surcharge amount, we can't vote on a recommended surcharge until after town meeting, which means we can't make our report to the select board until after we have the vote on the recommended surcharge.
Maybe we don't want to, do we definitely want to do it?
Definitely want to do what?
It's just such a long time span between now and then.
You got a lot to do though.
I was gonna say, we have a lot to do, because we should also write the whole darn report and just leave the blank for the,
Yeah,
you know,
that's what I was thinking we
amount.
do.
Okay.
And so the report itself would be pretty much close to final, and then, say we had a meeting in the first week of December and solicited final comments on the percentage, and then we voted the next week, or, so by December 15th, the report could be final and submitted to the select board with the idea that maybe their second meeting in January, we actually do the presentation.
I would think that we would also be getting input on the number options from the committees.
Yeah, prior to town
yeah,
meeting as
yeah,
well. Yeah, no, I think
So-
that's important.
But yeah, no, I started this with like, are we working backward from,
Yep.
are we working backward from having a surcharge before town meeting or not? And what I'm hearing is not. We'll have a surcharge when we go to the select board,
Yes.
and we should go to the select board no later than January. But that allows us to, January is after November, so we can vote on finalizing a surcharge recommendation after we've had a chance to get, to give a report to town meeting and get any feedback.
And meanwhile, we'll have been reviewing the text of the report with the exception of what the final recommendations are, both for
I mean,
percentages and then commercial, no commercial.
the nice thing about the math is it's very mechanical. Like,
Yeah,
once you
yeah,
have
and I
the
think
number,
that section is like, it will fall into place
yes,
once the vote is.
the table takes up the same amount of space, no matter what the
Yeah,
surcharge is.
exactly.
You can do the doc, you can do the layout, and everything.
Yeah,
coming out
and
now.
then it will be, the next day, it could be ready to be submitted to the select board.
Yeah.
Holiday reading.
Merry Christmas, we gave you something to read. Yeah,
That's why it's the second meeting in January, not the
right,
first.
yeah. All right, okay, more seriously though, all right, so a timeline is coming together here. I might try to write this timeline out more formally and put it in a memo in the next packet or whatever.
Yeah, and then even trying to think about where the where the outreach happens in September and October in
Yeah,
advance of town meeting in terms of going to, if we can't go to all of the committees, the real key ones that would have some guidance or opinion to us on percent.
so, all right. So here's this timeline, well, just this informal timeline. Let me run it by people and see if this makes. So first we have to have some slides, some material that we could use for committee presentations. So the next order of business for this committee is to produce that. Then we can take that to committees in the early fall for town meeting, get input. Concurrently, we'd be working on a written report. We'd present to town meeting. After that, we would vote on our final recommendations and fill them in. And then we would have a finalized report that we could present in January. Is that roughly the?
So we wouldn't start to meet, when would we start to meet with the commissions?
As soon as we have slides to show them.
Okay, so
Which-
that's gonna happen sooner than January, right?
Oh, yeah, no, that's like, we're talking September,
September, okay.
October timeframe.
Yep.
So,
But one thing you said that didn't click for me was a report to town meeting.
so
Something,
the,
but
technically,
not
yes.
our full report.
No,
Okay.
Procedurally, the way that we would communicate with town meeting is that there is an article at the beginning of town meeting where town
That's
meeting
what you're
hears
referring to.
reports
I gotcha,
from,
I gotcha. Yep.
various, and so, the select board chair could give a state of the
Inflated
town.
reports.
Yes, right. And so that's where we could give that report there. And that report would be actually a slideshow in terms of written material. Although it'd be nice if we had the written report by that point in the sort of draft all but, numbers form, because,
No, inform both.
so, all right. All right, let's get back to let me check back on the agenda. How are we doing here? We haven't talked about a community preservation committee. We don't need to make any decisions about that right now. But that is an open question of, do we want to try to get a bylaw written for a creation of a community preservation committee in April 2026 town meeting, concurrently with voting on CPA itself.
So we
there.
probably need to think a little bit more about what Winchester had to say.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth also just looking at what other communities did. I could imagine, I mean, Mike has regrets on it. Flip side though, is I could also imagine the reasons that he had for doing it that way also made sense, because I expect a lot of people, when people figure out that there's $1 million here that needs to get allocated, they will start caring about who gets to allocate it.
I think it's important.
Right,
Yeah.
so but if the measure passes in the November election,
Yes.
then it won't take effect until July of the following year, so July of 2027.
Right.
That's when the money starts coming in.
Yes.
So there's really not gonna be anything much to,
No, it's true. That's actually a good, yeah.
there's not gonna be much to actually send out until the following year.
Right. Yeah, you're really looking at
So I would, you have time.
annual, right, you're looking at like town meeting in, what is this, 2028? Did I do the math right? Yeah, because November 2026, you're in the FY 27 fiscal year. That, and then
So I pass it and vote,
you
because
pass, yes, you pass it, so then that affects taxes for the
starting July
FY
of
28 fiscal
2027,
year.
yeah.
Yeah, which starts in July 2027.
And then, so if you voted yes in November of 2026 at the Springtown meeting,
Right, you have multiple town meetings.
you could
form the
vote
committee.
it
Yeah,
and get it set up and running, so that by then the following year,
Yeah.
the fall of, or the spring of 2028,
yeah, the committee is long since established and,
Yeah,
and
and-
has already,
The other observation on this is that if you go to town meeting with 2 articles, one CPA, one the committee, they're gonna say, well, we're setting up a committee dependent on an election result. So we're really getting ahead of ourselves.
yeah, that's another,
And there's reason to wait. So I don't really see the wisdom in consolidating the two at one point in time.
okay, so don't. All right, I know we can revisit this decision later, of course, as we get input from people, depending on how pointed the questions are about this committee. I mean, the thing about these committees is that in general, the composition of these committees is a relatively well-established way of doing it. It looks an awful lot like the creation of this committee, where you have representatives from various stakeholder groups that, that work in the areas where CPA money might be spent. And then that, committee would vote on, quibble about like, oh, do you have, you need 2 select board members on it? Maybe, I don't know. How do they get,
It's not our job.
That's not our job, right? That's,
Moving on.
yeah, but you are tied, and it looks like the earliest that you'd go to town meeting for, for a vote to disperse money would be in May of 2020, or April of 2029.
What?
no, you do it in April 2028, because you've been collecting money that year.
But you wouldn't have gotten them, you would have, yeah, I guess you won't have the match money yet. And
No.
you'll only have part of the money, because you're still only you're still, well, when's the
Maybe
last
it'd be at
tax?
the end of,
May is your last tax bill.
I mean, they're quarterly, so, yeah, or end of June. But, I mean, you'd be making, in general, April town meeting votes on spending money for the fiscal year that starts in July. So that's how the budget works, like the budget,
So it'd be April of 28.
April 28 votes on a budget that goes into effect in July
Yeah, just not gonna have a
2028.
lot of money.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
indeed not,
But you still have
but you'd want to have a committee there to decide,
Yeah. what,
I
what,
would,
what moves
I would
forward.
prefer to have a committee look at it and be like, yeah, there's not enough here. We're gonna bank this for next year.
No. So that, but you do have,
Rather than do that by default.
yeah, so you have the April 27 meeting in the fall 27 meeting to
The-
set up the
Right,
CPA.
exactly. I probably would favor the April one, but
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
again, not strictly speaking this committee's problem, but it's,
But it got-
we, the town of Reading
Yeah,
would
but I
have to
think
figure
you,
this out.
I think you have ample opportunity post, yes.
All right. Okay. Let's see ourselves. Just in general. Yeah, I mean,
We're getting close to 9 o'clock, and I would love to talk about the one-page flyer that was in the packet we got before we adjourn. Just,
Yes.
I don't know what else you have on your agenda in front of you, but I was hoping we would get to that.
right. So getting back to the agenda, I mean, there's composition in our report. I think at this point, maybe we can, the next steps are a timeline and maybe draft slides. I'll even, I can take it on myself to make the draft slides for us to revise at our next meeting, and then we'll have slides. We don't need to start with a blank slide deck in this room. That would probably be awkward, but
And I think
even if I start with a terrible set of slides, I'm sure you all could make them pretty good pretty quickly. So, all right. So then, yes, there's the one pager that we have. There was a question that Sarah and Margaret were already discussing about whether whether
Sean
Parker,
Parker. could-
Yeah, yeah.
yes, could be included. What did we include on that?
Yes.
Yes, it could be. All right. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with that bullet. So Martha, you had comments, you said.
Yeah, if you go back to the upper part, I think where it says small surcharge parentheses 1 to 2%, it really should say 3% because that's allowed. So just change the 2 to a 3.
See,
Yeah, I'm
We should.
torn.
You know, we
'Cause that's
might
what it
not
is.
present that, but it's
Well, then you should probably do 0.5.
not true that it's not existing.
Yeah, I mean, it's 0.5 to 3% is accurate here.
Mhm.
The reason I'm making slightly pained noises is because I know that a lot of the objections that I've heard to CPA were centered around surcharge rates that we are not going to recommend. And I'm not interested in, having a fight over a straw man rate that no one's actually proposing.
I agree.
maybe just take that whole thing out, just say through a small surcharge.
That's
Sure.
That's probably fine. It's certainly technically
Okay.
you could,
Um,
the only other proposal would be if we need to be, although, honestly, the percentage thing is a little bit tricky because people get confused about percent of property versus percent of taxes.
Yes, yes.
And so it's the difference of between 1% and 1% of 1/10 of 1%. Those are two very different things.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you're right. Just leave it as small surcharge. And then when we're talking to people, we can make it clear that we're thinking on the low end of the range.
For all the recommendations.
Okay,
Right.
then the second bullet in the red box says affordable housing productions with an S. Does that really need an S or should it just be production?
No, just no S.
No S, she says.
Can I
Okay.
go back to the first bullet? If we're doing
Sure.
this in order. Projects most vulnerable to cuts. What does that mean? And the reason I ask is because when I first read it, it seemed to imply that things that are up and running that are part of the regular budgeting process might get cut and these funds could go to that need. And I don't think that's the case.
I
I don't
mean,
think that would qualify, generally speaking.
I was actually comfortable with this phrasing myself, just based on my looking at the capital plan evolution over the years and how recreation, I mean, well, like, okay, so affordable housing doesn't exist there. It wouldn't be the capital plan anyway, per se. But in terms of what does get postponed in the capital plan, it's rec stuff. It's all rec stuff.
Postponed,
Yes.
but,
And
but is that a cut?
well, it gets cut from the budget this year. It's not in the budget this year. It turns out it's not in the budget next year. It's also not in the next budget the next year.
If you put it, should you say budget cuts? Would that make you feel better, Sandy? Like,
Or you
Uh,
wanna say
I'm-
most
I'm-
challenging to
I'm
fund?
quibbling a little bit because it implies to me that CPA funds are available for more purposes than I think they are. Things that are, like, I'll say operation and maintenance or in the ordinary course or part of the budget generally are not eligible for CPA funding.
Yeah. No,
Um,
but we do cut capital projects all day long too, so.
Capital projects, particularly if they're land-based and so forth, and that differs in different categories. So an exception is you can sort of rehab or restore a recreational facility, but generally speaking, those types of expenditures are not.
So I would, rather than trying to be more precise here, I think we could probably just cut words to make it until everything that's left is agreeable. Something like, create reliable funding for projects to protect our parks, playground, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So then we're not
That's
talking
great.
about, yeah,
okay,
I'd like to get the word reliable removed.
okay.
I think create funding because reliable is subjective.
yeah, I mean, the base part of the match is certainly more reliable than like going to town meeting every year and asking for, some free cash or whatever.
Now it's maybe say protect and expand, because, you can use it, not that we're likely to do it in terms of open space, but other communities have used it to buy.
Yeah,
And we
mean-
could have, bought the poultry farm at one.
I mean, I like this framing, like, yes, technically, absolutely, that's correct. I feel like this
Preserve
framing
and
is more the
restore.
spirit of the Community Preservation Act. It is all about preserving things in the community that the community wants to preserve.
Historic nature.
Right, well, it's, yes.
Yeah, I would vote not to say and expand. I think just to protect our parks sounds good, but I wonder if we should change it to say projects that protect.
Don't have a strong opinion on that.
I like that.
Okay. I'd say that's like a motion in a second, sort of, take it.
You want
Alright.
the end restore, protect and restore.
Okay, that I'll take, protect and restore.
Sure.
Yeah, because that is indeed part of a lot of, 3 words, Barrows tennis courts.
Okay, if we go down to the third bullet where it says state funds, I'd love to see state funds be in all caps. Possibly matching state funds be in all caps, but at least state funds. Similar to the line below where it talks about for affordable, local funding source.
I'd go the other way myself and just get rid of all the all caps, but this is definitely a style thing.
Yeah, I just think the people who are most likely to object to adding a local tax would be most appeased by realizing that we are leaving money on the table that we would otherwise get from the state.
Yeah,
Yeah, but is it, I know what you're saying, Martha, but is it really matching state funds? It's not one for one. How do you word that where we're not, we pay $1, we don't get $1.
That's true, and matching does not have to mean 1-to-1.
But that's what it implies. That's what I would think.
Yeah. Additional, we could say additional.
Additional,
state funding.
additional.
The-
While we're thinking about that one, can we go back to the prior one? The second one? How about low-income households, including seniors, families, veterans, and first-time home buyers? Because
Yeah.
when I first read that, I thought maybe low-income seniors and then families. Households, not housing. Low-income households, including.
I see what you're saying. You're trying to,
Yeah.
you're trying to make sure that low income,
So it
Isn't
modifies,
just
low-income
seniors.
modifies everything.
I think that's,
yeah,
I like that.
That's a good catch.
distributes it over the,
All right, and the bullet at the bottom of that, the fifth bullet, we've left recreation out of that list. And
Yeah, I
think
noticed that. I
recreation
noticed that
should
too.
Be included.
Recreation should be the first one, I think,
yeah.
because that resonates. I don't want to say more, but we're a big sports town.
How about, because of the way we're doing with verb and subject here, how about prior to protecting our environment, do, creating space for recreation?
Do you want facilities?
Protecting our
Do you
environment.
want facilities in there?
It doesn't, I mean, I feel like facilities, I don't think we need to specify that. I mean, if CPA let us buy a soccer field, is that a facility? I guess, I don't, again, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
It looks like the top line is a different font size, or is it just my eyes?
That's quite possible. I was
Looks
getting
like
that too.
tomorrow is bigger than creating.
Margaret, have you been tapping on your copy over there or something?
No,
or
no.
Yeah, yeah. No,
That's-
well, I know what was on the
Ja-
screen
yeah,
is 100%
I've not, no, I
Jack's.
don't have it on my iPad,
Okay.
so Jackie's the keeper of the records.
I mean, there's, somebody else can come back. and-
Yeah, I'm happy if,
Tweak
if
words
it needs
or
to be
whatever.
tweaked, I'm happy if
There we
Jackie
go.
sends me the version of it, like, I can tweak it, but
There's getting the bullets equally spaced and all that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
because I think I did probably fiddle with it before I sent it to try to get it to work when it was what it was, but we've added a couple of
There we go.
spaces. Yeah, that looks good.
While we're doing small things, there's 2 spaces after the comma after veterans. Second
Second.
bullet.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Eagle,
That's been, actually, that was bothering me, but I was, it's also a
It's
super
better than what I
minor.
was doing for affordable housing.
It's, yeah. I'm gonna let people make all the substantive comments before I started talking about double tapping the space bar.
So if state funds are being capitalized, does it make sense, sort of a consistency, that grants on the following one be capitalized instead of all those other words that would give us local funding source? In other words, grants are the catchword.
Is the
Yeah, I like
reward.
that better, just
Yeah,
having.
good
bold.
point. And that makes a short thing that's bolded rather than a big, long sentence.
So Jack's grant, 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets down, grants gets capitalized and the rest of it is.
No,
Well,
the
the
other
next-
grant.
Just the word grant.
One line up.
Yeah, one line.
So gives the writing an edge for grants. There we go. Yeah, that grants.
That's
And then the
better.
rest can be normal.
Because there's that whole thing about bold making you sound like someone's yelling.
Yeah. I'm not super crazy about the capitalization in either case, but
Looks a little better now.
Yeah,
this is a yes.
state funds and grants, good,
Right.
okay.
Yes. No, it is, I mean, we've we've capitalized exactly the things that have to do with other people giving us money, which I totally,
Appreciate
on
it.
behalf of the finance committee, I endorse this this
Mhm.
priority.
What I was saying to Martha earlier is that I never knew about this, that for housing, that having some put into it opens doors. I never knew that, so
Huge, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's really important to share with people. What's the proper way to say it? Seed money?
Leverage, it
Leverage,
leverages
okay.
Yes. All right.
millions.
So
So what
moving
other-
on below the red box.
Yeah.
Under historic preservation, the third bullet, should that be markers right about where that
Oh,
cursor
yes,
is
that
now?
makes-
Had a
Yes,
maker's,
right.
yeah,
Didn't
God,
see that.
great
Okay.
eye.
And then preservation and improvements in housing, where is that? Yeah, first bullet under affordable housing. Do we want and between preservation and improvements?
Oh, yeah.
So that one is funny because it has to be an improvement that preserves housing rather than just a general improvement. For it to
Ah.
act,
So
actually
yes,
qualify
preservation
for-
is an adverb here.
instead of it like you can't just propose something. It
Mhm.
has to be actually something that's gonna extend the life of something. So the communities that fund housing authority modernization have always, each one has a very defined, what does that mean?
Mhm.
And it can vary from community to community surprisingly, depending upon what their council, their town council advises the CPA committee. So,
Okay.
Oh,
So the
I like,
third bullet says new affordable housing development, which is a separate category from preserving the existing properties.
right, and so it's funny, once you develop affordable housing with CPA funds, then you can actually fund improvements. It doesn't have to be just preservation. It just needs to have been funded initially by CPA.
right. There's a weird thing where like you're allowed to do more with CPA money for CPA created housing than for non-CPA created housing, which is
Crazy.
a
but-
little, that's pretty random, yeah.
Should the last,
Okay,
first
So
one?
over on the other side.
So, but before we leave this one, this is a minor thing, but I like the part where the and bumped Reading down onto being one line. Can we do a line break so that Reading and feasibility aren't hyphenated? Because I think both of them
Read better.
read better if you can, and right, and likewise, and feasibility studies. Feasibility can just go onto the next, all feasibility can be on the next line. It doesn't need to be hyphenated that way. Again, that's like double space level of importance, but I'll say it before we leave the section. All right, where were we going next?
Over on the other side, there's a duplicate bullet, restore natural areas, it appears twice.
Oh, yeah.
And then I kind of got thrown off by the verbs and so forth, where I wanted to say expand as opposed to expanded, and improve as opposed to improved.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're not being
Remove,
consistent
Not
about.
restore,
entirely
expand,
consistent, but
improve.
I wanted
Yeah.
to make it active.
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, before they were adjectives, but they were, or I forget the word for an adjective that you make by putting ed on a verb.
And so if you wanted to do that, do you change on the historic side
You could,
renovation
Yeah,
to
you could
renovate?
construct pickleball.
No,
Why is
I
pickleball
would,
Oh, just, I think it wants a space
don't-
between pickle and ball,
Oh,
so it's a
we
it's a
should
grammar
teach
thing.
it. We should
I was
teach it
gonna say,
pickleball.
like, pickleball is very much a word.
It is a word, I know,
Like-
I guess you could hit ignore and then it won't keep
Yeah.
calling up.
Okay.
So you do have space to add one more under open space and outdoor recreation,
There you go.
so somebody go crazy.
Surely, like,
Barrows basketball court or whatever that was, we keep
Oh, God.
complaining
What
about.
about the community gardens?
That says expand community gardens,
Oh, it
throw it in
does?
there,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
that's okay, no, but a good
yes,
one.
and, right,
Repair.
Upgrade Barrows community,
I mean, we don't even need to call out Barrows in particular, 'cause
Upgrade
it might be the worst tennis court in Reading, but that doesn't mean it's,
Rehabilitate.
So you could just say.
so if you could
So
just say.
repair basketball courts? Oh, yeah, upgrade, that's good.
Upgrade tennis courts.
tennis and basketball courts, so you get
Oh,
both,
okay.
both sports.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Wrap when we do that, it's okay.
And then I would go to the historic side and do renovate Parker Taverns.
I'm not sure. Can I pause on that? Because I actually don't I like the way it is now. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
is that we are not
Okay,
every one of
that's
these bullets
fine.
has a verb.
Yeah.
You know, but
I think that
okay.
when there's a verb,
Okay,
we
that's
favor
fine.
an active verb, but I don't know, like,
That's
it's
fine.
not.
I don't-
Is there room to fit in, art? You know, hire a professional archivist? Because that's something that we got with an ARPA person and made such a huge difference that if that's something we could do. Right.
I'm sure I asked Chase this question, and what was his answer? I forget.
Yeah, I don't know if that, yeah, you're right.
That might not have,
Because
been.
because it's a labor?
I mean, there is,
You can hire, I mean, there is, like, you can use some of your CPA funds to hire an administrator to help administer the CPA program.
yeah,
I wouldn't use hire
Okay,
because
yep,
operationally, we're in big trouble in the
okay.
town.
And I
So
would say
I would
historical-
avoid that.
yeah, no, don't do
Include
anything that
historical
makes-
preservation
think you're
planning
making
and-
the,
Archival,
And archival, yeah, something like that. So there's there's not only
preservation,
planning.
planning and archival.
and archiving or archive?
Improve.
No, archives?
Yeah, archives.
There we go.
And archives.
Yeah,
Archives.
because that would
Yes, okay,
potentially
yeah.
involve the person.
Alright, yeah, so there we've
And-
left it open to that. That's sufficiently vague that it's not, but it's not
Can we
also,
move that block down a little bit?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a,
Jackie had moved it up just to,
Okay.
when we were trying to get.
And could I suggest that Pleasant Street Center, we spell out the word center?
oh yeah, sure.
Cause it's
Doesn't matter.
already taking up an extra line, but it is a
Why
lot
don't we just
easier to
say
read.
129 Pleasant Street?
Nobody knows where that
Nobody
is.
knows
No.
what the
Okay,
street's address is, like,
sorry.
I certainly could not have told you that was,
Right.
I would have assumed Pleasant Street Center was a small number because it's so close to Main Street, but what do I know? 129, geez. Expect that to be a bunch of blocks away.
Oh, wait, it's not 129. 129 was a house that they did.
All right, there you go.
129 Or something, you're right.
That proves the point. All right,
Oh, and the URL at the bottom, does it really just end with double T's or are we missing the last two letters of that URL?
Good catch.
Study committee.
yes.
I can actually make just a short one that's readingma.gov/CPA.
Yes, please.
That would be
Okay,
nicer.
Great.
Please do so.
Later, the,
Oh, lovely.
by the way, does our thing have a way to contact us? Or,
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I assume it's just amounts to,
Can committee fit on that top line if we widen it up a little bit? So it's just the address on the second line?
Yeah,
Yeah, make that blue box a little wider.
does it fit? I don't know.
and I think you just, there you go.
Thank you.
Now what did it do?
I do not see a way to contact us on our page.
Oh, I thought there was a thing.
Nope. Many committees have here's a form for contacting the committee.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna want that, especially once we start doing our little roadshow. Because people may have feedback that they wanna give us afterwards, or people who watch the meeting if somebody's watching a meeting on RCTV, they're not going to, obviously be there to give us feedback on the spot. But they might see us present it to some other
Yes.
committee and have feedback.
Who are your other communications to go to? It's like,
I assume that's me.
I mean, I can have them go to me and I can distribute them to the entire committee or however you want. However you
Yeah,
want me
I
to
mean, I
set that up.
think. I
Can't
mean,
you also give the contact information for each member? So if, for example, I showed up at a particular committee and they wanted to feedback directly to me,
and that's also possible to make people's names like
Yeah.
clickable so you can email them. But
go right through the website.
We can do
Yeah.
that too, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
As a member of town meeting and as a member of Conservation Commission, my email is already put into the town website that people can click on me and send me things. So it would be a similar situation for this committee if our webpage had our emails. And one thing that was recommended when we put our emails in for those other committees was that you create a separate email that's just stuff that's coming to you from CPA clicking on the town website. So like I have a Conservation Commission email that's different from my personal email.
Right.
And
They
then
totally did
it
that
just
in-
directs the mail to my personal email from there.
So how do you fetch your email that comes from the website?
I have a Google Gmail account and it takes my website one and forwards it to my personal one, so that I get to see when people send me messages.
But you don't have to do it that way. Cause I know Laura Jem sent out the form and she said, where do you want to go?
Right. I'm just recommending if you're not already,
Yeah,
if you've not already publicized your personal email, you don't have to publicize your personal email just because we're making a website like everybody else has.
I remember I remember the form you're referring to. I can't remember why I got it. Was that something to all
Town
committee
meeting.
members? Was it
It
town
was
meeting
town.
members?
Oh, no, it was committee members, yeah.
I don't remember. Does the town have an email address for all of us, I assume? I mean, no.
For everyone on town meeting, yes, because then people can click on email all your precinct 8.
Right.
people, and you get an email that came to all of the precinct 8 emails.
And I don't,
Well, we're such a short-term committee. I mean, maybe it makes sense to have Jackie get it and just forward it to you, or if you wanna go.
or, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with getting it, but I mean, maybe for public records purposes, it's easier if it goes through a town address first, because then it's automatically there.
Yeah. We just,
So yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, when people try to email the finance committee, that actually goes to a short list of people, basically Matt, Sharon, me, Jackie. And so then if it's clear that their intent is to contact the whole committee, I'll forward it to the whole committee. But I can do the same thing here.
I
Yeah, we
suspect
could
we
have-
won't,
Sorry, go
I
ahead, Martha.
suspect we won't get so many emails that will use up all of Jackie's time forwarding them.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Jackie,
I'd say
let
we
us
don't get
know.
I mean, we've gotten, this last town meeting wasn't boring, and I got exactly one email to the finance committee, about stuff in that town meeting. For the record, John Sasso really doesn't like turf fields. So, which, hey, the CPA doesn't fund turf fields, what do you know?
Big
So,
issue.
that is relevant to this committee. All right. Okay, are we, so yeah, in terms of,
so we just updated the sheet. So
so we
this
updated
sheet,
the thing, which is cool.
we can bring this to the committees.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, we'll probably want to,
maybe Jackie, we should put a date in the bottom corner of today's date for editing purposes, so we know if we, right, do you think?
oh yeah,
So we don't mix it up with the first one.
July 7th. Yeah. Even tinier, whatever, but yeah, it's just for,
Do you want me to send an email to all of the committee people that we, and to tell them to get back to you if they would like us to come this week? Do a quick talk? And then once
Yeah.
we see who said, okay, I'll do that. And
Yeah.
then next meeting, we can see how many respond and we'll
Yeah.
give you up.
and you can tell them to respond to both of us, it's fine for people to talk to both of us, we're not close to a forum.
Okay.
So, all right, and then in terms of with the committee outreach thing, we decided that we'll make it so that we can be contacted on the website with emails, or, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just have a contact committee and it emails you. All right, cool. Set on that.
And we're
Yeah,
just
if you
gonna
go-
use that sheet to work to, when we go, right?
Well, we'll want
Few more
slides
talking
too, I
points
think.
too.
Yeah, I think
Really?
we'll make,
Okay,
I would expect to have slides.
Okay.
Some committees would expect us to present something, I would think.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we can reach out now to say, hey, would you like to hear from us?
Get
And
them
then we can, at our
scheduled
next
for
meeting,
September.
which allows us to segue to the topic on the agenda of future
Yes,
meetings.
next meeting.
Slowly making progress on the agenda. We're near the bottom. All right. Let's see. Did we pick? I'm getting confused because, of course, too many committees. Well, I have two, but that's one too many to keep for me to keep straight. Did we pick a time in August? Yes. I have August 18th on my calendar,
Yep.
Monday night.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we still on for that as our next meeting? All right. Oh geez, if that's our next meeting, we gotta think about Friends and Family Day more before we adjourn. Because
I think somebody has to sign us up. for a
somebody has to
table.
sign us up for a table and stuff.
Okay, I can sign us up.
Okay,
I think if we just have that brochure, I mean, that flyer like we had at the Friends and Family Day.
yeah,
would be
so,
fine,
yeah,
don't
and
you
I
think?
assume, right, I mean, as a town committee, like conservation, historical, and so forth, you all don't have to pay for a table at these things, right? So we don't have to worry about paying for a table either, I think.
We'll find out.
I mean, it's, you know,
Do you know, Martha?
I don't think we've had to pay for the table, and I think we've gotten a canopy and a table provided for us.
Okay,
all right.
all right.
I mean, we could, you know, you know, if it's a
It's
small
good
amount
that
of money.
you just
one of us-
remembered that.
Yeah,
Pat
so,
yourself on the back.
okay, thank you. All right, so Sarah will give us a table. At our next meeting, we will review slides. And we will have a list of committees that want to meet with us because we will have already reached out to them. So then at our next meeting, we can also divvy up who's going to what committees. I mean, they're all public meetings, so we could all attend all of them if we wanted to, but we obviously have to have someone tapped to be the person presenting to make sure someone's there.
And then are we bound not to make sure if we have a quorum, then we'd have to go into.
We'd have to post if we're in
Right.
danger of getting a quorum, yeah.
Have to organize ourselves.
So we'll, you know, we'll probably just make sure we don't have a quorum. It's probably the easiest way to solve that problem. Not going to meetings is the default. So, all right. Anything else? So slides, town hall presentation stuff, or not town committee presentation stuff. You know, anything else we want to put together for Friends and Family Day? We can basically plan our Friends and Family Day
It's street fair.
or street fair.
Yeah, we just.
This
did
is why
that.
we need to adjourn because I'm tired.
Wow.
Oh, 9:30, what's wrong with me? Work is what's wrong with me, just to be clear.
And you're going on
My job,
vacation, right?
my job, I got badly needed vacation coming up, yes. But I'm trying to finish so much before I leave. Anyhow,
Okay, we're good.
all right, so
got a
then
meeting?
are
got
we have a meeting?
assignments?
Well, you have minutes.
Let's look at minutes. I think I actually emailed Jackie a suggestion on the minutes because I believe the minutes called out the fact that Sarah proposed 1.25%, but that was in the context of Margaret asking about 1.5%. So I think we should include the fact that we were considering all of these things.
I know.
I don't
think
wanna, even though I am on
1.25
team
is-
1%, I don't want to prematurely rule out 1.5%. I wanna
or
make.
1.25.
Oh, we got teams.
Gonna
Okay.
have t-shirts.
Ads.
Yeah.
Like Dr.
So-
Seuss, thing
Um,
1.5.
Yeah, cool. That's, all right.
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second,
There's there's an extra comma. I'm gonna let it go.
Are you
all right.
joking? I hope.
No, I'm not. On that, under discuss the composition process and contents, the last comma in that section is not needed
An Oxford comma.
No, that's not Oxford comma. That's just a
A bad
extra
comma.
comma. Given that, because it's just, given the recent debt exclusions and this, given A and B, you don't put a comma after A. So, all right, I think we can take that as a friendly amendment to the motion that was made to approve these minutes.
I approve that amendment.
Yeah, all right, cool. Any, yes, I'm
I'll
not sure.
I'll second
Okay,
that.
I think we're making up parliamentary procedure as we go, which is a good sign that we should adjourn this meeting as soon as
Practice.
possible.
Yeah, it's good practice.
It is good practice, and I'm, so, all right, any other
We have to
comments and
vote.
corrections? Nope, all right, let's vote then. So we have on Zoom, we have, Martha,
I vote yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
and Joe, yes. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Martha. All right, roll call vote. Martha,
yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
and Joe, yes. Thank you all.
Good night.
All right, see you in August.
Yeah.
That could be.
We should sit here more often.
That was a pretty good discussion, so.
Yeah.
It's good content. It was a
Well, we're getting to the,
dense
we're
meeting,
getting to
the
the.
meat.
Oh, let's say.